Hey guys, I got a request to extend this Material UI table for searching. So what we're going to do in this video is add a little search box right here and a drop down. So in the drop down I can select whether I want to search by first name, last name, username, or email, and then I type in the box and it will filter down and search the items in this table. Now to help us out with this, we are going to be using the select field from Material UI. So if you don't know what that looks like, it's really nice. Just come over here and you can click whatever you want. So we're going to be using that. So I'm going to copy this. And if you don't remember, this is my Material UI form, and I'll link the code in the description below if you want to follow along with this. So we're going to copy the text field here and add it to our app over here. And we're also going to add the select field. So I copied the select from the Material UI example, and it looks like I copied the import statement, so let's add those first. So I'm importing select field and menu item, and let's copy the select field here, and I'm going to add it here. Okay. Now our text and stuff is going to be different, so we're going to say select a column, and the value of this we're going to have to add to our state, and we'll change these guys in a second. First I want to get our text and our menu items correct. So we actually want to use the same thing we are using right here. So first name, last name, username, email. So the value is going to be, for example, first name. And then our primary text is going to be what we actually want to display. So value is not actually displayed here, and we can actually get rid of that. So last name, this is only used for our purposes. So last name, so when for example on change is called, it'll pass us the value. So here we will have email, and we don't need a fifth one. Here we'll have password. Okay, so our select field looks nice. We just need to change our on changed and our value. If we come back to the example over here, it tells us how the handle change can work. So let's copy that and place it here. So I can come up here to my state, and we have a lot of junk in our state now. So let's add it to the bottom of our state here. So I'm going to say query, and it's going to be an empty query at first. And then here I'm going to say column to query. And at first it's just going to be an empty string. Or you know what? We can by default query first name. And make sure we do a comma there. So now down here, set state, I'm going to set column to query is equal to value. So value here, so whenever a menu item is selected, the value that we pass here, so if I, for example, select password, it's going to give us password with a lowercase p to our value here, and then to our column to query, we're going to set that. And then the value here, this dot state dot column to query is what we're going to show here. So let's look at that and see if that looks nice. So I can select a column. So for example, email or password or last name. So cool. So now I want to add to the side of this a text field so I can actually type a query for this. So I'm going to come and copy what we did for the form here. So grab a text field and paste that here. And so I'm going to come up to the top, copy the import for the text field because I don't think we have it in our app.js, and we don't. Alright, so this guy. So error text we don't really need. The value is going to be this .state.query, and then the name of this we don't have to worry about. Hint text, we can say query, floating text, query. You can set this to whatever you like. I'm just going to say query. And then on change, we're going to say this.setState, and we're going to update the query. So we're going to say e.target.value. So every time the user types, on change is going to get called. We're going to update the state, grabbing the current value in the input and set that to our query. So I can be like, hey guys, and so our state will reflect that now. So the only thing left to do is actually filter. So down here in our table, we're passing this data in, and if you remember last time, we have this little guy that we can sort by or order by. So the only thing we're going to do is before that, we are going to filter. So we're going to say this.state.query, and we're going to do a ternary operator, because if we don't have a query, we don't want to filter. So this.state.data, and we're going to filter. So notice what this does is if we have a query, then we're going to filter. Otherwise, we just return this.state.data. Now to filter this, we're going to say x. So x, and here we're going to get the property that we want to filter by. So that's going to be this .state.column to query, and we're going to say includes this.state.query. Oops, we want to say state here, and let's give that a save. So what this is doing is in our column the query, this might be first name, last name, email. So we're selecting that from this column, and we're saying if this includes it, then we're going to filter this out. And I believe we want a not. Is it not? So with filter, I believe, I always forget how this works. I believe if it meets the condition that it's filtered out. So if this is included, we want to keep it. So I believe we do a not in front of this includes. Now, if you've never seen includes before, what that does is it's just a string. It checks if this query is a substring inside of this string here, which is exactly what we want. So for example, first name, let's type tan. All right, so I did the opposite way. We actually don't want a not here. Give that a save. So we see tan there. So tan, we notice that filtered out. Now, there's one small problem with this, and I would like to see tan, ignoring the case, right? Because no one's going to actually capitalize this correctly. So the way we can do that is we can just say .to lowercase on our x here, and then in our query we can also say .to lowercase. Now we don't want to say .to lowercase every time we filter, so what we can do is in our on change, when we set the value, we can set to .lowercase, .to lowercase here. The only small problem with that is if the user types capital Q. Okay, I was thinking it would lowercase that the value, because we're setting column. Oops, this is on the select field. I did that in the wrong place. I think what we're going to do is just set it up here. So in our render function, I'm going to say const lowercase query is equal to this dot state dot query dot to lowercase. So we'll do this at the top, that way we're not doing this inside the filter statement, which runs every single time. So instead of using this dot state query, we're going to use lowercase query. So when we lowercase the x value and lowercase the query, we now can check just based on the characters that they have. So here's a D, and let's check this against other fields here. For example, username, and I forgot about that field, and I was noobing up. we don't actually want to sort by password. We'd rather sort by username. So let's move that up. Username. There we go. So I just swapped out one of my menu items. So now I can say username, and let's search for Mbane. So MB, and we can get Mbane 8. So cool. So that is how you can search and filter out items in your table. So again, just to conclude this, what we did is we added a select field here to narrow down which column we wanted to sort by. Now this is not needed at all. If we wanted to get rid of that, what we could do is we could do a bunch of OR statements, right? So x.username contains the query, or x.email includes the query, and if any of those are true, we filter it out. Okay, so that's one way to do it. But again, we filtered it down, and then whatever we type, it updates in our state, and then that reflects in our render function down here, and we filter out the data that we're going to pass to our table, and we get rid of all the ones that don't match our query includes. Right? And this allows us to, as we type, instant feedback, right? Because as I type a letter, the state is updated, our table is re-rendered with it filtered correctly. So very nice. And we can check email too if we want to. We could just get, hey, maybe I just want org emails, or maybe I want com, or maybe I want government, right? So pretty cool. So that's how I would add filtering to a table like this. Again, this is a very simple linear search that you can add. Now, this is kind of annoying me that these are off center, so I'm going to try to format these real quick and see if I can get that to work. But my CSS skills are not great, so this is a experiment on the fly, see if we can get this to work. So I'm going to create a div around it and tell them to flex. So flex 1, and see if that centers for us. I feel like it might. Alright, it did not. So usually when this happens, what I like to do is just inspect this and see why this is happening. So now that we're flexing, alright, so this guy is actually, alright, so I think what's happening is this guy's just a little bit taller than this guy. So what I can do on this is add a style and say margin top auto. And I think what it'll do is it'll push it down, and these two should meet up now. Dang it didn't work. I don't think it added, let's see if it added the style. So we have that, inside of that we have this guy and this guy, and margin top did not work. Oh, I want to display. Huh, okay, that's what I did wrong. I did not want to flex one, I meant to say display flex. And now we might not even need the margin top here. Alright, okay, cool, so now they line up, but now they're not in the center. So maybe, I don't know how we get those to center actually, because we want them right here. Maybe I say align items center, justify items, justify items center. Okay, I don't know, maybe margin auto. I think with that I would have to, yeah, wrap it with a div on the outside. So I want this guy style display flex, and I want this guy to say margin auto. And I think that'll work for us. Yes, cool. So what I did there is I have this guy display flex, and he flexes across the whole side. And then the div in the inside, I want him to display flex as well, and I don't want him to flex one and flex the whole thing. I just want him to center, so I did margin auto, and I have these two. So there we go, they now line up. My last little thing is to add a little spacing maybe around them. So margin left, maybe 1 EM or something, just to get this guy off. Cool. So a little styling at the end there, which has nothing to do with how you would add filtering. I just wanted this to line up nicely with Now We Do. Well, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope that helped on how to do searching and filtering on tape.